And good evening. Thank you for coming to our author's reading of Inner Landscapes, True Tales from Extraordinary Lives, 40 Years of Writing in the Recorder of Western Mass with author Richie Davis. I'm Lori Wheeler, director of the Arms Library. A number of local libraries are also co-hosting tonight's program. Cushman Library, Irving Public Library, Leverett Library, Sunderland Public Library, and Wendell Free Library. Richie's book is chock full of the people, the humanity of our local rural landscape and community. These are true stories that chronicle our history, originally appearing in the Recorder. His stories are intimate and rich, letting us into the lives of those both well-known and those hidden in our hills. Each story highlights a person or persons bringing out their truths and what really matters. Inner Landscapes is really such an enjoyable read. When you get hold of a copy, sit down and savor. I'm going to give you a little bit, tell you a little bit about Richie. Most of you may know already, but he has won more than 35 regional news and feature writing awards as a reporter and editor for more than 40 years at the Greenfield Recorder. Beginning as the newspaper's West County reporter in 1976, he also covered police, courts, state and regional government, as well as environmental, energy, human service, political, and a variety of other issues. He also served as the newspaper's county editor, overseeing a network of town correspondents. He wrote dozens of in-depth series on topics ranging from nuclear power and the aging population to high-tech cottage industries. He won a Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting grant for coverage of an effort between Leverett and Letcher County, Kentucky to foster cross-cultural dialogue. He served as arts and weekend section editor of the Springfield Daily News, as well as an editor of the Genesee Valley newspapers in suburban Rochester, New York. A graduate of the State University of New York in political science, he also took part in 2014 in Conflict Transformation Across Cultures certificate program at the School for International Training with participants from 26 countries. Richie has been a professional percussionist for more than 50 years, specializing in Greek, klezmer, and Sephardic music. And as a resident of Montague, he blogs at his website, richiedavis.net. So how tonight will work is that Richie will read for half an hour, and that will be followed by Q&A. So please write your questions in the chat, and then we'll get to them in order. And so most of all, just enjoy, and thank you again for being a part of this. And thank you so much, Richie, for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And this is, I was telling Lori before people showed up that this is just such an odd time to be coming out with a book or anything else in the world, like a recording or something. And, you know, trying to, well, normally I would be going from town to libraries, to bookshops, bringing my book around and, you know, having copies for people to buy. I'd be autographing copies. And instead, everything is Zooming. So I'm just so grateful to have this opportunity. The book, which I have a copy of here, is, you know, I think of it as an expression of local, because it's all the stories are locally grown. The book was published in Athol, and I've really made an effort to have it sold at local bookstores instead of going, having people going online and buying them through Jeff Bezos. And the stories are all local, and the stories that I chose are really universal stories, and it was, the hardest part was deciding what I was going to include. And now the hardest part is deciding which of the stories I'm going to read for these Zoom sessions. And the one that I'd like to share with you is one about Carol Purrington from Coleraine. And now the thing to tell you about all these stories is that they're all written in the present tense. And so it's really to immerse you in the person, in the time that they're with us. And fortunately, Carol is very much with us, and she's still writing her poems. The story was written in April of 2009. A pond made by beavers, fish now in the magic of twilight, by a tall heron. It's time to go indoors when I'm not living at home. This is the problem. Yes. For 1,300 years, the 5-line Japanese poetic form of tanka has described images and the emotional world of the writer. In 31 syllables or less, tanka are concise musical verses that date back centuries further than haiku, each line often capturing a date, often capturing a single image or idea, the 5 lines creating a single thought. Coleraine writer Carol Purrington's 8th book of tanka, Gathering Peace, is the culmination of more than 15 years of specializing in the gentle Japanese form, although she's flexible with the count and placement of syllables. Over the past 15 years, I've been finding words to fit my days into this ancient pattern, Purrington writes in the preface of the book. My hope is that these poems will be like stepping stones from my world to yours. The cover photo of Gathering Peace conveys the spaciousness of the landscape at Woodlawn Farm, her family's 2-century-old Coleraine dairy farm with verdant fields just across the dirt road from the classic white 1826 farmhouse. The scene, with hills off in the distance, approximate the eastward view of a bedroom window has afforded Purrington, who's been bedridden for most of her nearly 58 years. Purrington has been paralyzed with polio since 1955, when on her first day of first grade, she put her head down on her desk and complained of severe headache symptoms. It was the year that a new vaccine began to bring the disease under control. Greenfield Recorder readers followed the young girl's progress month by month as she was hospitalized in Greenfield and then in 1956 at Children's Medical Center in Boston, followed in 1957 by a rehabilitation center in Wellesley. She writes, left by my parents in a hospital room in isolation, the dark of their going, the dark of my staying. Purrington continued her schooling with the help of a dedicated telephone line to her classrooms at Colerane's elementary school, Mohawk Trail Regional High School, and eventually Greenfield Community College. There have been important technological improvements over the years. Fiberglass breathing aids in place of the iron lung, computer and voice recognition software to greatly expand the constricted world of someone with severe disabilities. Yet time passes slowly in Purrington's overstuffed room. Its creep is marked by the rhythmic whooshing of a pale green turtle shell ventilator that rises and falls on her chest and allows her to breathe despite her paralysis. It's been more than 10 years since Purrington has been able to spend part of her days sitting up, yet she's characteristically upbeat, buoyed by her Christian faith. It's been With only some difficulty, she demonstrates how she turns the pages of a magazine suspended from an overhead rack using a foot-long mouth stick. It has a rubber eraser at one end and a plastic base molded to fit in her teeth. Many years ago, she had a rack that could hold heavier books. When I was hospitalized in Boston, there were half a dozen children who were fairly severely disabled with polio. We were taught to turn pages and write with mouth sticks. It was her Aunt Evelyn Sellers, another polio victim with whom she lived in the center of Coleraine for a couple of years, who first suggested that young Purrington could become a writer. I love to read, and there were some things I couldn't do, she recalls in a cheery voice. Making eye contact with a visitor with the help of a small mirror attached to the head of her bed. She discovered tanka around 1990, about a decade after she began writing more compact haiku. One of the haiku magazines she was receiving at the time ran a tanka contest, which she entered. I fell in love with the tanka form, she recalls. I read some Japanese tanka in translation and some English language tanka. I really enjoyed the spaciousness of the form after dealing with 17 or fewer syllables. To have 31 or fewer syllables felt great. After she fell under the enchantment of putting words together, Purrington introduced tanka to her neighbor, Larry Kimmel, who helped her work on her first and subsequent books and co-authored A Spill of Apples with her. These aren't in order. The photos aren't in order, just so you know. We've been gentle but honest editors of each other's work. Her poems have been published in the Christian Science Monitor and have won the Tanka Splendor Awards, the Tanka Splendor Award, and numerous international contests sponsored by a variety of poetry writing associations. At first, Purrington printed with the help of a mouth stick. She began using an electric typewriter with an automatic carriage return requiring one of her 10 siblings or her mother to advance to the next line. In the beginning, she could type with limited use of her fingers, then with the aid of her mouth stick until her neck muscles began weakening from post-polio syndrome. About that time, one of her brothers convinced her to consider voice recognition software for a computer. She began using it in 1993 or so, along with a computer whose microphone and screen can be swung into place by her mother. And this is not her mother, this is Susan Todd, just so you know. Words have always been important to me as a reader first, Purrington says. I've always had more time to read than most people, so I read more than most people. Most days, my life doesn't feel limiting, she says. I work at keeping my mind occupied and challenged. I read some books for entertainment, but I try to balance that with books that keep me thinking, because the days go better that way. Her travel is restricted to moving back and forth between the turtle shell of her daybed and the fiberglass port-a-lung device at the foot of her bed that provides enough ventilation for nighttime sleeping. It takes 2 people to help move her small body into the transparent chamber, which she jokingly refers to as looking like Sleeping Beauty vault. Language is a freeing medium that's let her travel far beyond the limits of her fragile body. In this world, I never will walk a trail up a mountainside, she writes, but I can sail with the clouds that visit the highest peaks. Words are wings. Words are gifts for singing and giving away. In 2 of her books of verse, The Trees Bleed Sweetness and A Pattern for This Place, Purrington has imagined the lives of an American Indian woman and a woman settler from Boston, respectively, living as she has on Wilson Hill. I've taken on the voices, vocabulary, and lives of hundreds of people, she says. Poetry has allowed her to go where prose never could. Her writing was once inspired by Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, or John Donne, says Purrington, yet I always felt traditional poetry was too wordy for what I wanted to say. I think I'm a person who's drawn to concision of speech and Yankee understatement. The 119 short poems review recalling the death of her eldest sister, her first romance, her 16th birthday, and in her 40s, having to count the costs of living with a seriously disabled body and acknowledge to myself that I wasn't going to outgrow them, that they had limited my life in ways that would affect me until I died. She writes, "The days I did not sing, the nights I did not dance, their joy spiraling out of the throat of a hermit thrush. The balance between the physical limitation she feels in her bones and the freedom in her soul shifts from day to day," she reflects. "I don't think I feel trapped by my body because my mind and my voice are free. Joy and beauty are wings for me." And this is some of her writing and some of her books. So that's Carol Purrington. And I don't know whether I should, whether we should take a break and do some questions and then go to another reading. I think that would probably be best. So you wouldn't have to keep hearing me talk. So how should we do this?
Richie, do you want to do this by chat, or do you want me just to, I think I can unmute everybody?
Yeah, if you want to either, yeah, if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, if folks would do that.
Question, then you'll sort of pop up to the top, or you could raise your hand. Whatever works. Hi, Court.
Hey, Richie, how's it going?
Great, great.
Good. That was such amazing. Such an amazing. I don't remember seeing it, it helps me to realize how just everyday life is where we live with our neighbors that we may not have met. And that poem, the one that you read towards the end, was so beautiful, about the spiraling out of the throat of the thrush. Oh my God.
Yeah.
All the nights I didn't dance, I came spiraling out of the throat of a thrush. I mean, what could be more beautiful?
Carol's such an inspiration for how to live your life, no matter what you're dealt. And she's shared this beauty that she's just so aware of, and her talent for sharing it is just such a gift. So thank you.
Mm.
Does anyone else have any questions about Carol or comments about her?
Well, not to, I'm going to say, since no one's jumping in there, I'm really fascinated that you are doing this in a Zoom format. I have to say, I haven't been to a lot of Zoom evening events, and here I am in the comfort of my own home, watching you in the comfort of your own home, but as if being at the theater in our own private boxes. I wonder how it is for you.
Life has become like theater, hasn't it? Theater of the absurd. We're I don't know. It's great that we do this, and I've just been so glad to be able to get these stories out. I mean, I originally decided to write the book because I knew I was going to be retiring, and I knew that these stories. I mean, over 42 years, 43 years, I've written, thousands of stories, and maybe a few hundred that are that I really would love to think are will live on in some way, and for people who either didn't read them the first time, forgot about them, or have never read them, to be able to meet some of these people who I found really fascinating, and know that their messages and their lives are inspiring people out there all over the place is really a rich one. So I'm just glad to do it.
Richie, hi Richie. That was lovely. So all of these stories are based on articles that you wrote for the Recorder?
Yeah.
I find it remarkable that a local newspaper would have stories of that ilk. I mean, I think that's really special. And you were really lucky. I think they were lucky to have you, and you were really lucky to have employers who saw the value in that kind of story, because God knows we need inspiration.
Yeah, that's one of my take-home messages from this book, is that that newspapers, which are in the process of vanishing, probably, at least in the form that we know them, are really struggling right now tremendously. And this is a reminder of what they offer, especially community newspapers. I remember early on, in my career, I was talking with the head of AP in Boston, Tom Baldwin, and told him that I was looking to move on, and he said, community journalism is really where it's at, and you really should appreciate what you have. And he was absolutely right. And especially the Recorder, I really felt and still feel was really such a blessing, both for the community and for me to be there. So yeah, and the three stories that are in the back of the book, which are about the essence of creativity. I mean, I can't imagine any other small newspaper, community newspaper, allowing somebody to go into that kind of a piece. Just, yeah, it was a real gift to me, and I think a gift to the community.
Cool.
So speaking of gifts to the community, the next story I want to read is about Wally and Juanita Nelson.
Cool.
And it's the story dates from 1980. And again, Wally and Juanita were true inspiration to a lot of us. And so I'm gonna try once again here, sharing my screen with the photos that I have here, and see if I can do this. Yes, see if I can do that. How can I do that? And okay. Wally and Juanita Nelson are close to the soil. They're picking weeds from a patch of oak leaf lettuce on their hillside farm. It is warm on Woolman Hill, where the two subsistence farmers have been working for 6 years, but the breeze makes it comfortable. Nelson's slight gray beard gives the only hint that he's 71 years old. His contemporaries are retired, living on fixed incomes. But like his wife, He remains close to his work, close to his convictions. The couple is so much at peace in their work. The landscape of the 100-acre Quaker-owned farm where they are tenants, so tranquil. It's difficult to imagine them in prison repeatedly through the years for those convictions. They met, in fact, in prison. Juanita grew up dirt poor in Cleveland, so dirt poor in Cleveland that her winning a poetry prize at 17 was how her family could afford her first telephone. She attended Howard University on scholarship and studied journalism at Western Reserve University, and then reported for a Cleveland weekly newspaper, where she worked on a story about discrimination in the jails. Nelson, a World War II conscientious objector who had grown up in Little Rock, was serving 33 months in a Cleveland prison for walking out of a civilian public service camp where he'd been assigned to do alternate service. Juanita, whose black hair has touches of gray, has spent 3 hours of jail in Washington, D.C. Had spent 3 hours in jail in Washington, D.C. after forcing service of a cup of hot chocolate in an all-white drugstore. It was not an isolated arrest for her or in the effort to desegregate the nation's capital. The Nelsons have been repeatedly arrested, investigated, and they say badgered since 1948, when they stopped paying taxes and even filing income tax returns because they disagreed with spending money for war purposes and other programs they see as unjust. During the Red Scare of the early 1950s, when they lived in Cincinnati, the Nelsons numbered among Americans unjustly branded communists. The mood was very bad. The people were so fearful, it was hard to get anything done. I just didn't pay any attention to it, Juanita says. But her husband, who had been part of the fledgling Congress of Racial Equality's journey in reconciliation, challenging the South's Jim Crow laws in the late 1940s, and then challenged discrimination in Cincinnati, left CORE when the organization became politicized and banned communists as members. The couple made their way through Cincinnati and Philadelphia, New Mexico, and a couple of communes, gradually coming to the realization that if they were to see their convictions through, they had to become more self-reliant. Their aim is not only to avoid being exploited, but also to avoid becoming exploiters. If there are winners in life, Juanita reasons, there have to be losers. Rather than be either, the Nelsons simply refuse to play the game. I don't use electricity, she says simply, because I don't like the system that would bring it to me. Their hand-built house also has no telephone and no running water, but an ingenious gravity-reliant system supplies the liquid from a small tub fed by water hauled upstairs to their loft. They heat and cook with wood, and they even make their own soap. A subsistence farm in the purest sense of the word is an impossibility, Wally Nelson acknowledges. There's no purity, he says. Yet their half-acre oversized garden, dubbed the Bean Patch, does provide 75% of the couple's food, and they preserve much of that food for year-round use. And in their 1965 Dodge pickup, the Nelsons truck the remaining lettuce, peas, carrots, and other vegetables to the Greenfield Farmers Market, which they helped organize in 1975. Where they work each weekend provides them with most of the between $2,000 and $2,500 they figure it costs them to survive a year. Half of that spent on the truck. They also sell their vegetables to area restaurants. The Nelsons are not immune from jolts in the nation's economy. Their expenses have doubled from the $1,000 they figured they needed 20 years ago, although they're trying to limit spending to $2,000. Combined with the lack of insurance, the threat of failing health is their greatest personal worry. Yet they have stayed healthy. And Wally Nelson, who calls the national economy crazy and artificial, believes solidly in their hands-on direct approach. There's all this real work to be done, and people can be producing food. I know if I have land, there can be food and people can be fed. I'm less at the whims of the people who try to affect the economy. The movements that approximate the Nelsons' ideals come and go with the decades, but the Nelsons remain committed. If you believe in something, it's forever, says Juanita. If you can't build on what you've done before, you're not getting any place. It's very sad to see people who've graduated and go on to something else. Your life is your action. Wally has watched his contemporaries speak out, build careers, and fall back into retirement. Years back, they stopped getting a kick out of life, he reflects. Life stopped being exciting for them. Calmly, doggedly, the Nelsons defy the system that they feel works against their ideals. At times, other campaigns, the anti-nuclear movement or the anti-war movement, for example, complement their values. But the Nelsons' stand, for the most part, is made on the farm rather than at the demonstration site. If I have anything to say, Nelson reflects, it's because I've got my feet planted and I know where I am. I always know why I'm here. That's been at the heart of their standing outside the system, of their standing close to the land. I have to know why I'm doing something, Juanita Nelson says. For me, the reasons are still there. They haven't changed. Wally Nelson died in 2002. Juanita Nelson died in 2015. And that's Wally and Juanita. And there's Archie. Hi, Archie.
Hi. I just want to say something, Richie, about going back to Carol. I can sing, I can dance, I can walk. Am I there?
Yeah.
And I can do everything in life, but I could never express it as beautifully as she did in her poetry. It's amazing that with her disability, she could enjoy life so much.
And she can help us enjoy life so much as well. Yeah.
Richie, I'd like to say something too.
Sure.
Arch and I were always looked forward to reading your column in the Recorder, and we believe that local reporting and local newspapers are incredibly important, just as you do. We've always felt that what you have written really does express the heart and soul of this area that we love so much. And we're very, very grateful to you for doing what you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and the Recorder is like this amazing mirror of this incredible place. As I said earlier, I'm just so thankful that I wound up where I did. And I look back on it now in hindsight and think, my God, did I really get to do that for all those years? How did that happen? And the Recorder still is struggling, like all newspapers are struggling, but the people there are really dedicated to getting stuff out that really reflects the community. And I mean, one of the amazing, really amazing thing was that I got to do this in addition to, covering, the nuke plants and the pipeline and the meetings and all the stuff that was going on, environmental issues and whatnot, day to day, and yet they let me also do stuff that really mattered to me, that seemed like it really did reflect this this community. So
Richie, it's Court again. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not talking too much, but I
No.
I remember coming in here, moving here in 1980, and noticing the editorial policies. And remember Tim Blagg was very active back then. I feel that over the years now, it's been what, 40 years, I guess. I think that the editorial policy and the way the paper covers the community has really transformed. And in some ways, you came to be the voice of the Recorder as you got towards the end of your career. And I think that's reflecting how I felt being a part of Franklin County over the 40 years. And I wonder if you would want to comment on how you think the Recorder reflects what's happened in Franklin County over the years, or has been affected by it, or has affected it.
yeah, I think it's a combination of all that, and it's the Recorder is like a it's a team effort, and it's really made up of lots of people who work their tails off trying to do the work that I was doing in 1976, the Recorder. That was still we still had the typewriters, and we still had just gone off hot type, and it has changed so much, and the demands on people there have increased, dramatically, so that now you're constantly on a treadmill to put stories out. But I think that the reason that I left the Recorder to sort of for a year and a half. I went out to Springfield, became the arts editor down there and the weekend editor. And I did it mostly to because I didn't believe I could leave. And I did it to prove to myself that I could actually leave if I wanted to. And then once I was there, I thought, I must have been crazy, because it felt like such a community to me, and it still feels like a genuine community out there. And I could reach out and get a sense of who I was writing for all the time. And I think that the Recorder just has done such a great job as a semi-independent, semi-privately run newspaper that's smart of a small group of papers. And most of the time, papers are owned by corporations, and there's this bureaucracy, and you really lose touch with who you're writing for. And I always had a really strong sense of who I was writing for at the Recorder, and I think that's still the case, much more so than at other papers. And I think that the paper is, the community's really reflected, really appreciated that, and it's gone back and forth and felt really like home in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that now that I'm peddling these books with the disadvantage of a pandemic, it's meant that I've only been able to do these readings online, and I've really insisted on getting the word out that people who want to buy copies of the book, certainly go to the library and read it. But if you want a copy for family or to have, that people should do it at the local bookstore. So the World Eye has it, and Boswell's has it, and Broadside has had it, and has it in Sawyer's has had it in Shelburne Falls. And when people say, well, where can I get the book? I say, well, you can get it at the stores, or you can get it on my website, richiedavis.net. And I've even offered to, go out and, deliver it to people and give you the hand, autographed copies, rather than the simplicity of just, going online and having Jeff Bezos prime it to you. So it's another expression of this local community that's really, that Wally and Juanita were all about. So. Any other questions that people have?
Can I make a comment, Richie?
Sure.
I know you've interviewed thousands of people for the Recorder, and I feel very honored to be one of them. You've interviewed me several times, and I've always enjoyed your interviewing. You're a great newspaper man.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, trying to decide which stories, and I'm now working on a second volume of stories, and so again, I'm struck with, so what do I include? What do I, what should be in here? And again, I'm looking for stories that are universal and yet really go deep into these local characters, and I don't know. There's so many characters that it's hard to decide, where to go with it. But hoping that I can wrap that up pretty soon.
Richie, excuse me.
No, you please go ahead.
I just have a quick comment. One of the beauties of having your book is that the people, for example, Carol and the people that and Wally and Juanita, they live in our house with us because they're on the bookshelf, and that's really a lovely gift to anyone who has the book. So thanks for that. I really like that you're collecting them, and if you're working on a second collection, yay!
And incidentally, I wrote to Carol today or yesterday and told her that I was planning to do a reading. And when I first put the book out and wrote to her, I didn't know whether I was going to hear back from her, but she wrote back immediately, and she was like delighted and so grateful. And it's just like to know that she's still on people's shelves, and that somebody can go to the library and look for a book and find her. And then the other thing about the book that I didn't get into this book, but I did manage to get onto my website, and there should be a little marker in your book that points you to the place on my website where there's a resource page where each of the stories has references to other material about Carol, about Wally and Juanita, about all of these people. So if anybody is really turned on by any of the stories, they can dig further, and pretty much all of them have that. And there's a story in there about, I don't know how many people have read the book or not, but there's a story in there about the Quabbin, and it goes into all these there are oral histories of the Quabbin that are that you can tap into from this book. So and oral histories of Juanita also. So it's all there.
So Richie?
Yeah.
What were the challenges to writing about the people in your own home area, especially when you had to cover some of the harder stories?
You mean originally?
Yeah.
Well, the challenge was always trying to find the time to get to, you know, to make the time to do that, and to sort of push other things aside. And the biggest thing that helped there was my editors who allowed me to spend time, I mean, to do a series of articles like I did with Norton Juster and Arnold Black and Barry Mosier and Jeannie Zeiger, and talk with them about creativity. And I remember the day that I suggested that to Roger Bowman, who was the arts editor at the time, and I said, what if I did a whole series on creativity, and it could run on the arts and entertainment page one day, on the front page on Friday, and then on Saturday's Life and Time page. She said, oh, that's a great idea. And that just let me go do it. And that's unheard of. It's really unheard of. But you know, going off, I never really had any resistance from anybody to do anything that I wanted to do. And it was always, this was always the stuff that I loved to do the most, to really get out from behind a desk and run out to spend time and, you know, with Gerald Fox and do a story about Susie Pellucci, or do a, you know, story about Archie Maynon's making menorahs, and you know, trying to understand why people did stuff, and what the inner meaning was for them. And that's really where my heart was, and so I got to live with my heart for all that time.
Thank you.
So I don't know what.
Does anyone have any questions or comments that you haven't already asked or said?
One of the strange things about the book is that there aren't any, there aren't many stories here, or I don't know if there are any stories about agriculture. And agriculture was like my, well, I don't want to say my deepest love, but because there were so many things that I love about writing in Franklin County, but one of them was agriculture, the principal one. And I did this, I mean, I created a beat. Again, I said, what if I created a beat where it was energy and environment? And the energy was obvious because we had 2 nuke plants, and we had, you know, this was a hub of alternative energy, or that's what it was called at the time. And also farming, and all these environmental issues like erosion of the river and everything. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you do it? And so I could run and do that. And so I'm hoping to get some of those agricultural stories in the second book.
Richie, when are you expecting to get the second book together? Are you working on that now?
I'm working on it now, but I haven't brought it to publisher yet.
Okay.
But I've gotten some of the permission, and get it to the publisher by the end of the year.
Nice.
Okay, I think that if there are no more questions or anything, we could call it an evening. Thank you, as I said before, thank you everyone for coming. And Richie, this was absolutely wonderful. I hope you'll come back in some form, hopefully in person, next time around with your new book. So thanks everyone. Oh, and if you would like a recording of the event, just contact me at the Arms Library by email or by phone number, and I'll send that right out to you. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Rick.
Bye.
Bye.
That was very nice.
Lovely.
Thank you, Lori.
Oh, you're welcome. Did that go all right for you?
It was wonderful.
Okay, excellent.
I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it was really fun. And I loved hearing you talk about your stories. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love a copy.
Okay, I will do that. I
Great.
found out from somebody that it wasn't recording on Facebook, but I do have it recorded on Zoom.
Uh-huh.
So I'll send it out to you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I really thank you so much.
Okay, be well.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Gary.